Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Grand Scale Motivation Show. It's good to have you here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining us from your part of the world. Today, I am excited to have a special guest who I'm going to be talking about the topic on corporate leadership with. And but before I go into talking about him, I just want to let you know how we met. So we are in Harare and we are leaving Harare for Joburg at the Zimbabwe airport, at the Harare Robert Mugabe airport, and we are. He is right in front of me, I think, and I didn't know who he was. Well, I knew the guy, but I didn't think we would have met anywhere, right? So now we are at that place where you get your where you have to put in your laptop for screening, for security reasons, and all of that. He put his laptop, I put my laptop, we put our belts in there. He goes in front, I think, or maybe I was in front, I don't remember. But to cut the long story short, we took our laptops and we left. I'm now in Cape Town and he's in Joburg. I opened my laptop and I'm expecting that, I'm using the laptop properly. It's the same make of laptop, right? And when I'm trying to get in, I see the name Tawanda Gumbo on my laptop and I can't log in to my laptop. And I'm like, who the heck has hacked my laptop with the name Tawanda Gumbo? And I go and I look him up. And after some days, I then figured, no, this is the top boss. And our IT department realized that, no, you might have exchanged laptops somewhere. So I had to call him. And when I called him, the fun stuff about what happened is that he said, Uno Tidanyoni, I now know your name. I've been trying to look, and my whole IT department has been trying to look and thinking, who hacked our boss's laptop? Because when he tried to open his laptop, he also just figured out my name was on it and he couldn't log on to it. So that's how we met, and that's how this interview has come to be. So I have Mr. Tawanda Gumbo here with me. Mr. TG, welcome.
Thank you very much, Unotida. My hacker.
Funny story it is. But let me give you his formal introduction, because this man has a CB and a half. I had to draw a timeline to get to understand what's been happening in his career, and I know we're going to learn a lot from it. He's a chartered accountant, both in South Africa and Zimbabwe, so CASA, CAZ. He's the Chief Financial Officer of CBZ Holdings, one of the leading financial institutions in Zimbabwe. He's the former Chief Executive of Deloitte West Africa, where he led over 30 partners and 1,000 staff members for about 5 years. Before that, he was the CEO of Deloitte Central Africa, where he held that position for about 8 years, where he led over 500 staff as well. His major competencies are in audit and accounting, leadership, of course, operational management, and business development. He has held a lot of leadership positions outside his working environment in the leadership scope, and he's a former or past president of Institute of Chartered Accountants in Zimbabwe and other boards that I will not mention at this time. But he is just the leader we want to talk to and get to understand. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, we need a drum roll for this man, Mr. Tawanda Gumbo. So, welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Onatida.
Oh,
I'm
and then,
glad our relationship has changed from being my ethical hacker to now being my interviewer.
it's interesting how these things happen, eh? And
Yeah.
one of the guests who's here, who I know you know, Samuel Takuzwa Nehumba, who's a friend of mine, is the one I had to ask for your contact details for. He's like, hey, dude, can I? Can you give me your boss's contact details here? And I see a lot of people are giving drum rolls there. Welcome, Amanda, to this show. So let's get this started, CG.
Sure.
The man, Tawanda Gumbo, who is he? How did he grow up? Where did he grow up? Which schools did he go to? And, yeah, let's get that started.
Yeah, that's always it sounds like a simple question, but it's always quite a deep question, right? Because it's a question that you ask yourself all the time. Who are you, and who will you be in the future, right? And so who you are it's forever changing all the time, right? You don't want to ever to keep that static. So in terms of a historical perspective, grew up in Kwekwe, went to Kwekwe High School, government school, right? And I served my articles in Kwekwe as well, believe it or not.
Deloitte Kwekwe.
Yeah, Deloitte Kwekwe, actually. And then I merged the Deloitte Kwekwe office with the Deloitte Gweru office to make it the Midlands office. Yeah, so that was where I gathered a lot of experience from day one. Yeah, so full-time Kwekwe boy in every respect, but consistently trying to transform myself and change myself into something bigger, better, and more influential, I guess, every day.
Yeah. So here you are in Kwekwe High School. What in the world made you choose the world of accounting, chartered accountancy at the time?
An accident, actually. I was doing maths, physics, chemistry, and biology for my A-levels, and I thought I was going to move on and do medicine. And then a friend of mine who had been the previous head boy of Kwekwe High School, and I was now the next head boy that took over from him. And he went to Deloitte. His name was David Cool. He'd gone to Deloitte. And I think when he was there, he was like, TG, I think this place is made for you. This is where you've got to be coming. You're going to be coming to this place,
Yeah.
And so from thinking about all that medicine and stuff, I went to find out what this whole world of chartered accountancy actually was about.
Right.
And I met the previous partner in the Kwekwe office. His name was Hugh Wright. And he says, what do you want to know? And I said, just tell me, look, I've got this book here that's telling me about chartered accountancy, but I need to meet like a real chartered accountant. Are you a chartered accountant? He says, yes, I am. And so I start interviewing him, right? And in fact, I'm asking him to say, listen, I can see some numbers in here. I can see also stuff. Is it as exciting as it sounds in the book? And he says,
yeah,
real life is even better, And then he says, would you be interested? And then he says, are you keen? Would you be interested to join us? And I said, yeah, I think I would be keen. Let's see what you guys have to offer, right? And that's how I got it. I got the place just like that. I mean, it was fate, I guess.
Wow.
So I went to ask him about chartered accountancy, and he ended up offering me a job.
All right. Yeah. So now when you got into it, so I guess it wasn't too much of a hassle. Then you were a numbers guy, doing maths, physics, was it maths, biology, chemistry, or something like that? And you got into this space. It wasn't. Was it a natural flow for you? Going through the qualification and all of that, was that a natural flow?
Yeah, no, look, I think on the numbers side, the number side was generally easy for me, to be honest. Less complex, compared to maths. Accounting is, the numbers are a lot simpler, all right? But I think the thing that really mattered the most was the people side. And I like dealing a lot with people. I like interacting with people. And the profession just offered me so much opportunity to do that. And I think that was the winning part. It wasn't so much the numbers, it was knowing people, because you're constantly interrogating and trying to get information. So how you relate to people becomes crucial, let's put it that way. And that fell more naturally to my strength.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you qualify in 1996, all right?
Yeah.
You're still in Kwekwe at that time?
Yeah, still in Kwekwe at that time, yeah.
I'm trying to look and I see 1996, TJ qualified, 2008, is it 2004? This is like 8 years later. He's the CEO of Deloitte. Is it Central Africa?
Yes, Central Africa, yeah.
In 8 years from qualification, how did this happen?
I think an element of opportunity, all right? Meeting you when you are ready, opportunity coming in at the right time, right?
Yeah.
Remember, I'd already demonstrated at that stage, because when I became partner, I started running the Midlands office. So at that time,
when did you become partner?
98. 98 is when I made it to partner.
2 years from qualification.
After qualification, yeah. No, but I'd already, remember, I served articles. The old 5-year articles.
Oh, straight from Kwekwe High.
Straight after my A-levels, exactly.
Okay.
So that's why the timelines.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I joined straight from A-levels, and I went into Deloitte straight after my A-levels. So that trajectory, I guess, by that stage, I demonstrated that I could run an office. And I'd already run the Midlands office very profitably at that stage. And so I think it kind of demonstrated that there was something there that I could do. I got an opportunity, and the opportunity came at the right time, which is what gave me exposure probably well ahead of when I would normally have gotten exposure in the firm. Yeah. So that it was just being in the right place at the right time.
I hear you, but I think we want to dig deeper into that, because there were so many people at that time who could have made it. What do you think went through the preparation in those 8 years that made you stand out?
I think it's got to be the relationship aspect, to be honest. I was lucky that I can build relationships very easily and very quickly. I'm sure you, as my ethical hacker, will have experienced that, right? So I think it's the ability to deal with people, and to deal with people as honestly as is possible. I think people generally appreciate honesty and integrity a lot. So that worked to my advantage, to be honest. That's what really worked to my advantage. And so in those 8 years, I think I got an opportunity to demonstrate to the rest of my partners and to the other firm members that I was worthy of entrusting with some relationship going forward. Yeah.
Okay.
I'd say that was the biggest thing.
All right, let's dig deeper into this relationship building issue, because I think it's a big thing in corporate leadership. What nuggets or things that maybe may seem natural to you that other people may learn from about how you deal with relationships in the workspace? So maybe we can start. How do you work with your superiors? How do you work with your colleagues and your subordinates? what's your philosophy of working with relationships?
So, I mean, a lot of people will say this, but the reality is, in practice, it's easier said than done. And this is relating to people at all levels with a degree of sincerity and honesty in how you approach people. I always say, if I want to see a leader and how a leader really leads, I have to look at how he treats people that don't threaten him, right? People that are not in a position of influence. It's when the guy who's sweeping the carpet or is cleaning the toilet is coming in, and how you relate to that person that is indicative of truly how you are as a leader. I think that, and people say that, but the reality is that if you can see how somebody relates and whether they do it genuinely or not. So what I've always tended to find, whether it's a colleague, it's a superior, or somebody that's reporting through to me, I always try to relate to them first as a person. Who are they? And I've tended to find that there's so many things that you can learn, irrespective at what level somebody is. Because remember, that's a passage of time. So we can be at different positions at different points in our lives. It doesn't mean that just because today the guy is a sweeper, tomorrow he'll be the CEO of something else, right? Or he'll be the entrepreneur, or he's the business leader. So I try the best I can to relate to people irrespective of where they are, but just as people, because there's a lot to be learned from everyone, to be honest.
Yeah. So I think I got to learn a little bit of that after your laptop was, I sent your laptop back. I was telling my wife, there I am on LinkedIn trying to check my messages, and I see a message, and it's from Mr. Tawanda Gumbo, and he says, "Hey, how are you doing?" And I'm saying to my wife now thinks, no, this is your crush, like, I'm like, you don't know who this guy is. We used to talk about this guy when we were doing articles. He is like, and then you're just asking, how are you doing? And I'm like, is that all you wanted from me? It really messed up my mind. And I think you are like that. You treat people in a way that makes them feel like they are cared for and they've got dignity. And with superiors, I mean, it's a big challenge that many people face with how to deal with superiors. I mean, to say dignity and integrity, only break it down for us. There's corporate politics too. There's just a lot of difficulty. How do you handle that kind of relationship?
So typically, I try to put myself in their shoes, right? So if it's my superior, I'm trying to think, what is important to them? What do they need to know in terms of leading the business going forward? So right. if I can help them from that perspective, if I put myself in their shoes, I find it becomes easier to then deal with the kind of information that they're likely to need, or to think in their shoes. And normally that's how I try my best to put myself in their position as much as possible. Because it is only from that perspective that the things that are apparent, or the things that you need to solve, or that they need me to solve for them, become more obvious, right? Become at least a little bit clearer going forward. And then that's what I try to do. Just anticipate what it is they're likely to want from me, and therefore try to then be a step ahead of what they're doing. That's I find has probably served me the best, to be honest. Because by the time they start asking the questions and they're asking what's your perspective, I give them an honest perspective that has also thought about where they are, the problems they are trying to solve for at their level, So that's how I tend to deal with the superiors. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
All right.
So in this instance, so if you take in my current role, right, as a group chief financial officer, I've got to think, what does the shareholder want, right? Because the shareholder is ultimately, and what does the CEO require in respect of the finance aspect of it, and how do we enhance shareholder value? That's, if we answer that question, if you answer the shareholder question, in most cases you're able to then tick the right boxes, because you're looking at it from the investor's perspective of what they are after. And every investor wants a good return, right? So that's what you've got to focus on.
Okay. Let's talk about that return for a moment, because you said part of what made you stand out whilst you were leading the Midlands office is that you led it profitably. And I couldn't resist but notice that there are competencies that you have developed that are not just in the chartered accountancy profession, like leadership, operational management, business development, technology and innovation, and strategic business value. How did you get to, like, did you always have them in you? Like business development, I'm sure would make you as profitable as ever, because you need to have marketing and whatever skills of, getting to get business. How did you learn that?
Look, there's no leader that's just born with these things, right? We develop the capacity over time, and you develop that capacity through exposure, right? So you've got to deal with the problems, you've got to encounter problems that you then apply your mind and apply yourself to in order to gain the experience. So if you look at all of those things, yes, as much as, some of them, yes, you can read about, but the honest truth is that, it's not just about reading. You've got to live those values. And over time, that helps you. And I think one of the best things that I realized, growing up, I used to play a lot of team sport. And, team sport, you've got to rely on others, all right, to execute on your behalf. Even if you're the captain or whatever, right? You've got to rely on other people. So the ability to rely on other people and make your expectations crystal clear to them is important in terms of developing these skills that you've just mentioned. Because you're not an island. You learn these things from others. Yeah, you learn these things from others, and over time, and from watching other leaders. I think for me, that's been some of the best lessons that I've had, is watching what other leaders are doing in the market, and where people have done things well, to study and look carefully what they have done and how they have applied themselves to the given situations, so that if such a situation should ever come my way, I'm a little bit better prepared for it than would otherwise be the case if I didn't look at what others are doing. So I do study a lot of other people. Autobiographies, I read a lot.
Okay.
Right? I try to learn as much as I can from what others are doing, and then try to apply it for myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are some of the autobiographies that stand out for you, or some of the reading that you do that you think has contributed in a way to the journey that you have had?
Look, I've read a lot of books in my time, but I'll tell you what I'm reading right now, which
Right.
I'm finding really fascinating. And this is a reader, this is a writer that I've got a lot of respect for in terms of the depth of his thoughts. Grant Allen, I'm sure you've probably come across, Grant Allen.
I've heard of that before, yeah.
So the weird thing is the current book of his that I'm reading, and I've read a lot of Grant Allen books anyway, right? But the current one I'm reading is called Falling in Love, where he's kind of going through comparing whether relationships should be based on natural selection versus human selection, where people sit and say, okay, so and so should marry XYZ, and do versus natural selection, where you fall in love and you go through that emotion and all that sort of stuff. And so he's doing like a whole thesis on falling in love and going through the motions of that and challenging Darwin's principles of evolution and how those have been applied relative to what normal social settings are going through and what in the past, arranged marriages versus natural selection, effectively. Yeah. But the level of his depth of thought is deep, very deep. So I've been enjoying just his thoughts along those lines. Yeah.
Great. Now, another question for you. What are some of the lessons that you learned after, say, now you are the CEO of Central Africa in Deloitte? There's a big difference between that, just being a partner and now being CEO. What shift did you have to make between that of being a partner in charge of a smaller team and going to 500 staff and professional staff for that matter?
So I think probably the toughest lesson, leadership starts with self, right? So you self first, because if you can't manage yourself, it's difficult to manage other people. All right. So the first thing you've got to master, and the thing is, because that self is constantly evolving, you're having to learn how to manage self in different circumstances all the time. So it's an eternal life lesson. It doesn't stop. You don't suddenly now know how to manage yourself all the time, right? You learn certain things about yourself as you go through life. And you manage that. So I think the biggest adjustment coming from just being a partner came from not just managing self, but now having to manage other leaders, right? Because a lot of the partners, they're leaders in their own right? So transforming from just pure personal management to then to managing fellow leaders. That was a big adjustment. I don't want to lie. I mean, it really was. It was a huge adjustment, and it tests you to the max. It tests you to the core, because you soon realize that it's not. I found the more honest you are in understanding your own shortcomings as well, it helps you to lead other people better, because you lead them from a position of honesty, and they appreciate your additional value if it is coming from an honest place and not because you're trying to manipulate them, right? So for me, that was a huge transition. Managing other leaders is not easy, but if dealt with from a position of truth and honesty, I found it makes it easier, because then people understand where you're coming from, right? They know you don't mean them harm, but that what you wish to do is truly in their best interest as well as your own, right? So it's coming across authentically to be for the best interests of the business and for everybody that's involved. And I think that's what then gives you, let's call it the permission that people give you to lead them, because they know you truly mean well. Yeah. That what you're doing, you're not doing it for personal benefit. You're doing it for the business as a whole and for their benefit as well. And if they trust and believe that message, it becomes a lot easier to lead them. Yeah.
I'm trying to get to a place where I understand that leadership philosophy and actually think that it actually works in corporate. I mean, we've got some seriously narcissistic leaders who make it to the top, and they seem to make it way more than the kind of leadership you're talking about. How did you manage to deal with, and I'm sure you might have met the character I am talking to you about now. That's bossy. How did you manage to deal with that as you were going up the corporate ladder?
Okay, look, you always come across, right, the narcissistic leader, so to speak, right? But my personal style, and I've stayed pretty much true to it even now, is that any of the people that deal with me, they know when TG is dealing with you, he's always, it's about truth and honesty, to be honest. And those are long games. It's not a short-term game, right? So if somebody's being selfish, sooner or later they're going to come true. Those true colors will come out. And the only way you can have a long-term game is if you're being honest, and sticking to the truth and dealing with matters unselfishly for a long-term game. That ultimately I find is the true test of time. So even those that are narcissistic eventually realize that you mean what you say, and you do what you say. So that the message you're putting out there is not inconsistent with your actions, right? Because it's important to have that congruence of truth in action as well as truth in what it is you're saying. So if what you say and what you do are consistent, over time, people can tell, your actions will let's rule the day, so to speak. And then ultimately, even those that are your detractors or those that are narcissistic, eventually realize that you're not being inconsistent, right? You're the same person today, you're the same person at home, you're the same person at work, you're the same person wherever you are, right? You're being true to those intrinsic values all the time. And to me, that's a long-term game. It's not it's not an overnight thing. It's a long-term play. And the truer you stay to that, I think that speaks more volumes than whatever else you might say. It's what you do that's important, yeah.
And speaking of that long-term game you were talking about, I mean, when one looks at your career, you can see that you were in the same firm for over 20 years. And I'm sure many of your colleagues, soon after qualifying and after becoming a partner, were getting many opportunities. And I'm sure you also got quite a lot of offers to get into industry all this time. What made you stay?
I think the beauty about the firm, is it allowed me to be different things at different times, right? So yes, when I'd been CEO, so when I got tired of being in the Midlands office, right, then I moved to Harare, and then we're running lots of offices, Zim, Malawi, Mozambique, so the firm kept growing in response to the growth I needed in my career. And when I got tired of sitting in Central Africa and knowing those African countries, right, I moved to West Africa. And so got involved with West Africa, completely new dynamics, different situation, different environments. So at every single turn in my life, the firm transformed itself in a way and allowed me to grow and gave me opportunities to grow consistently. And I guess that's why I stayed that long, because everything I wanted to be at that stage, it was turning out to be possible. When Zambia, Malawi got too small, well, Africa came, right? West Africa came. And after West Africa, Africa itself came in its totality. And then out of that, then into Southern Africa again. But it was different things at different times as I needed the growth, let's put it that way, and needed the challenge. The firm had something to offer at each turn. which is why I stayed so long, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now you're moving to Central Africa and the rest of Africa. I'm sure there was like some dynamics that changed there, different culture, different people, different ways of working. What were some of the challenges that you faced there, and how did you manage to deal with them and still, excel from Central Africa to Africa itself, like you say?
I think one of the biggest dynamics, I think in business in general, the biggest changing dynamic is never the situation per se. It's the biggest change is always the people, right? That's what changes. And moving to West Africa, obviously the culture is different. The people are different. They don't know whether to trust you or not to trust you. So I had to build a lot of trust up front. To say, seriously, when I say we're doing this for the benefit of the firm as a whole, I really mean it. And people take time to trust that message. They take time to trust that message. They don't just open up the date just because you've said it, right? They have to see the actions over time talking to the same message that you are preaching out there. They have to see the deeds to the words, the deeds, deeds not words, right? Become crucial. And so given the history that I had, and then moving into their environment, so to speak, and then they used to call it their environment, You're coming in as an outsider, outsider. So trust building became crucial. It was probably the biggest thing that helped me make it there in that sphere. And even at the Africa level, suddenly now you've got the East Africans, you've got the Southern Africans coming in, and you're sitting at the Africa level and they're thinking, these calls and decisions that you are making, are you truly trying to do it for the total benefit of everyone on the continent as opposed to just your practice, right? So you're now making decisions for all the practices in Africa. Trust was important in achieving a lot of that. And results matter, right? When people see that they are performing better than they were before by virtue of the actions that you're taking, then they start believing your message. Then they start believing that what you're saying is consistent with what you're doing. And that became really, really important. And at the end of the day, that's the only message people will understand. It's when they see your actions. So it's what are you doing? What are you truly doing? And let's see the results of your actions. And when those results are consistent with what you're saying you're trying to achieve, it becomes easier for people to accept your message. And so even if they're from a different background, they start trusting your message a lot more. Yeah. And that for me was the saving, was the saving grace, if you want to call it, is that we were able to demonstrate that we could make all partners across Africa more wealthy and more prosperous if we ran it as one practice across the entire continent. And you can move resources, the best resources across the continent at any point in time to deal with the clients. So that message, the minute that message started resonating and the results started reflecting that this works, the resistance reduces. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
So over your journey of corporate leadership, what are some of the achievements you made that you feel super proud of? And some of the milestones that, when you remember them, fill your heart with joy?
So I think that's quite a very pertinent question, right? And it's a question that I had not really thought much about before this. And it is only recently when I went back, came back into the country, back in Zim, that I realized the impact of what we did 30 years ago Because when I joined the profession back in those days, there were very few blacks, let's put it that way. Okay.
Yeah.
Pulling
Yeah.
a spade a spade. Very few blacks at the time, right? Yeah. And we went on a huge rampage to create as many black partners and as many black chartered accountants as possible. And that didn't hit me until I went back home recently. When it comes, back in Zim, and then you look at all the major listed corporates, and you see just how many chartered accountants came through. I mean, I can almost, on every single firm on the stock exchange, I can pick up the phone and there's a Deloitte person in there that I can call. And I had not realized that impact. And so if you say, what is the best thing we ever did? It's that intellectual transformation of so many of our people. It hadn't hit me, And recently, for a friend, I was looking, these listings that are happening now on the NASDAQ called SPACs. It's a new form of special purpose acquisition vehicle that guys are using for listing purposes, right? And a friend asked and said, look, TG, do you have any guys that you know that could help us? We need a director to sit on the SPAC. And I picked up the phone and I called a friend of mine out in Texas. And he had a list of more than 10 people that he knew that could easily sit on the board of a SPAC, And it was just fabulous just seeing the network, the global network that we created at the time, that it doesn't hit you until you need something, and you need to get something to happen or to execute something. And then you realize, wow, my goodness, there are so many people whose lives we've touched. And that made me feel, that was the proudest point, to be honest, for me. I just felt we did so much and we never even realized it. And there's such a huge expanse of Zimbabwean professionals who are chartered accountants all over the world. Anywhere you go, this is the beauty about the profession, is that these guys are spread all over the world, and you don't realize how big that network is. I mean, you're a proud product of the same network, right? You're sitting out in Cape Town. So I know when I'm in Cape Town, I can pick up and there's a chartered accountant there that I can talk to, right? And that's probably the proudest thing that I really am really proud of that. I'm so proud of it in the sense that Zimbabwe has huge intellectual capital spread all over the world. And when you need to execute something on the ground, it's a phone call. It's a phone call, literally. And that is, yeah.
And for sure it is.
It's something that's hugely understated, to be honest. But its impact is massive.
Wow. And that's very true, what you are saying now about how the Black people in Zimbabwe and in Southern Africa actually have grown in this profession and in corporate leadership. And to have had a contribution in that must mean a lot. But I can't resist but see how much of a people-centered person you are. Because you could have answered this question with some numbers, but so if you're such a people person, there's this thing that people just think that people who love people a lot don't actually produce the results that are needed on the ground. Profitability, you're looking at the bottom line. How do you think you were able to create these great relationships and at the same time create great results financially throughout your career?
I think, okay, so there's an underlying assumption in your question that says because you've got great relationship doesn't mean you can't make, that does not correlate with tough decisions.
Type of personality, like I said.
So the most difficult thing I've had to do is to ask people to go, all right?
Yeah.
But I think it's understanding the truth of the circumstances at any point in time. And if the truth of any circumstance at any point in time mean that we must part ways, then I'm going to be honest with you, Onatile, and tell you that you've got to go, right? That time, you've got to find alternatives going forward because our current relationship is not working, right?
Yeah.
And that takes a huge amount of toughness to be able to get to that point, right? But I think it's understanding that for any business to do well, the hierarchy of that business has to be based on meritocracy, all right? It's got to be based on meritocracy. It's got to be based on your worth to what you bring to the party. And so that's a conversation that has to be constantly held frequently and all the time. And when we have it, it means if I'm really into the relationship with you, I must be honest enough to tell you when it's time for you to go or for me to go, right? Depending on who needs to go there, right? If we get to that situation, it's important to have the ability to tell somebody the honest truth. So in running the businesses over time, even now in my current role, I don't shirk away from truth. If I have a perspective and I think that is the truth, and I can honestly have that conversation with you, I will put it on the table. Whatever needs to be put on the table, I will put it on the table. I don't shirk from what's required. Let's put it that way. And I think that works across even at a personal level, at the home front and in the work front. It's important always to confront whatever the truth might be and where the situation needs to be going. You've got to confront that in an honest and transparent manner.
Very deep conversation I'm having with you here.
Take it home too.
So we are here at the Grand Scale Motivation Show, everybody. We are with Tawanda Gumbo, the Chief Financial Officer of CBZ Holdings, one of the biggest financial institutions in Zimbabwe. We're about to close off, but if you have any questions that you want to ask, please do go ahead and send those questions so that we can ask them. As we're waiting for those questions, I'm going to ask you two fun questions. The other one is a little serious, as deep as you are. It's like, so how do you get in touch with yourself? That's the first one. And because you talked a lot about knowing self, and then that's how you get to be able to lead other people. So I want to know, how do you get in touch with yourself? And then the second one is, what kind of daily routines do you have?
Okay, so probably I could wrap those two questions almost into one because it's part of knowing self. I like to get up early in the morning, normally around 5 a.m. and some of you will be familiar with the 5 a.m. club. I really do. I'm a proponent of that club.
You're a 5 a.m.
Yeah, no. I find it's just a lot of peace at that time of the day, and it's the and it's the first thing I try to get up to at a spiritual level, and self-introspection at that early hour of the day allows me to think more deeply about things that I could otherwise never find the time to execute. So that time just gives me some personal space to ask myself the deep questions and to ask myself the tough questions for me, right, for myself, and do some self-introspection that early in the day. And I try to do that as frequently as I possibly can, right at the beginning of the day. And I find that just refreshing, and then I take my walk straight after that. Normally I've got a little dog called Hercules, who I like to take for a walk. Yeah, he loves going for walks. So I take him for a walk early in the morning. It's 5:30, 6 o'clock. We're out on the walk. And sometimes in just observing simplicity at play, dogs are very simple.
Yeah.
It puts me in touch with my simple side, with the simple side, without making life complex. It just breaks down life into a very simplistic form. And that just allows for self-introspection whilst doing that. To say some of the best things in life are the simple things in life. So that's my daily habit. I love doing that daily, but it puts me, that's how I find myself to a large extent. It just puts me in touch with me, in a way that not many other things can. so yeah, that's how I find myself. That's my daily habit, right?
Fabulous. Going straight into the day, going to work, and like, what are your up to the nights? I suppose you've done a lot of burning the midnight candle too. How does that work with family? You balancing that? How is the integration managed?
Well, I'm lucky now that my sons, I'm sure you can hear a little bit of noise in the background. Clearly, Chelsea fans are very happy right now. I'm a Man U fan, so
So am I. So the noise is troubling you right now. You're feeling
the noise is seriously troubling me right now. I'm having
why did we even set this up today at this time? Okay.
Yeah, I know. But I think it's how do you call it, balance. I don't really look at it as balance. What I find is you've got to, the personal life, the work life. You got to find a way of merging those two in a manner that is so. My family knows if I have to work and I'm busy, they appreciate that. And of late, I think we've had to unlearn a lot of things because of the current pandemic that's on, right?
Yeah.
I've had to bring my office home in a way that wasn't the case before.
Changes
so
everyone's routines, I suppose.
no, we have to relearn stuff. I'm telling you, and this is the thing I think about life is you've got to be comfortable with learning and unlearning things. And more than anything else, this time of the year has taught us to unlearn a lot of stuff we used to take for granted. And I think that is the secret, though. That is the secret to making it work, is that by unlearning stuff, it means you try to accommodate the new stuff that's coming in. And I think that's the thing with life, because even as the children were growing up, now they are men. I've got 2 men now, right? And my daughter, who's the youngest, she's 16. The 2 old ones are 25 and 24. But over time, when they were a lot younger, I used to schedule, so my peer used to know, I used to schedule their rugby matches into my diary. So they'll be in my diary to say, this is when the rugby match is on. So she knew, so I'll treat it just like a straight up appointment. It's an appointment as good as any. And that's how I managed to merge their lives into work. And I think we're having to redo the same thing now, right? Yeah. We're merging work into family, which a lot of us had probably tried to compartmentalize and separate into 2 separate boxes. But I'm finding life is teaching us that you don't do that. Mix it up and make it work. Yeah. Mix it up and make it work. And that's what we've been doing of late. So every now and again, when you're having this conference call, you'd have the dog barking, you'd have the child running in, and we've merged life with work, and I think that's how it should be, to be honest.
Yeah. It should definitely be like that.
Yeah.
Got a few questions here. One coming from Sam. He's asking the question. I mean, you've stayed in the same firm for a long time, although you said you were changing jobs. Would you recommend that people stay in the same place, or they explore into other areas, and like staying in until it pays off type of vibe? What's your advice?
Yeah, it's a tough question, in the sense that different people will have different perspectives of what constitutes success for them, right? And everybody's definition of success is different for each individual, right? And more than anything else, for me, the main focus was making sure that whatever it is I'm doing, at any point I'm doing it, I must be enjoying it.
Yeah.
Right? Because my purpose comes from loving what I do and feeling that I'm actually creating something important in life, and as long as I find I've still got purpose, then it's easy to stay the course, whether it be in that same business. And if you find you no longer have purpose in that particular business, then by all means change it and be somewhere where you believe you can add value and you can achieve the purpose of your life. So for me, as long as I found purpose in what I was doing, I could wake up and do it every single day. I would wake up anytime and do it over and over and over again because I had purpose. Yeah. And the minute I started feeling that my purpose was changing and that I needed to do something else and help my country do something else and make changes in Zimbabwe, then that purpose shifted, right? And that's why I moved. So I think for each individual, that's the question you have to answer to yourself. And nobody can tell you that. You will wake up and you will know, I've got purpose and I'm doing something that's important in what I'm doing today. And as long as that is there, then be there. Then that's where you should be, right? If you lose that, change. Yeah, change until you find it. That will be my advice.
The charismatic you is coming out strongly. I wish. I was just about to say amen. Master TG is talking. Oh my God.
Live with purpose, my brother. It'll make your life a lot easier.
Purpose is purpose. Come on now.
Yeah, it'll make your life a lot easier. Make your life a lot easier, yeah.
Yeah, and then one last question from Jennifer Shambare Mtalai. Hi, Jennifer. Good to see you here. And so she's asking, what are some of the practical ways you have managed work-life balance? But I think you've actually quite addressed that. She's asking, I think she's got a more specific, she wants more practical ways. I know you've said you integrate everything, but she's saying, what are some of the ways you've managed to make that happen?
Okay, so my children will tell you Dad is always working on these Pomodoros, right? I call them Pomodoro moments, right? And I just try to split my day. Literally, I've got like my alarm set on drumbeat every 40 minutes. Sometimes I make it every 20 minutes, but it just allows me every 40 minutes to say, right, what am I actually doing? What have I done? Yeah. And have I achieved the purpose that I should have achieved? And it forces me every 40 minutes to reevaluate how I'm using my time on a practical basis, because I want to get to the end of the day. I need to know that I've actually achieved something, So I find if I just let the hours roll without review, you can end up wasting a lot of time. So the Pomodoros help me. It's a well-known concept. It's not like I came up with it or whatever. It's a well-known concept, but I apply it. It's one that I really definitely apply, and I found it to be useful. The profession also helps, profession and timesheets. So even now, I don't have a timesheet now, right? But I still work to a timesheet, and people can understand, like you're not keeping record of time, but because I've always accounted for my time, I've always accounted for my time, the habit is well set, But now it's just repurposed to what it is I'm doing now. But I still run with my Pomodoros every 40 minutes, which were the original timesheets back in those days. 15 minute, I think we used to call it 15-minute units, as we used to call it. So you'd run, you know, in units. I still do that even now. I still run my time on that basis. And I think it just allows you to be more productive because you're constantly self-evaluating, right? You're constantly evaluating yourself to say, okay, last 40 minutes, what have I been doing? Okay, what have I done? You know, and now what's the next? If I've not done enough, what do I need to do in the next 40 minutes to fix that or to get that right? So I found that useful, and it's a practical step that you can take for yourself, depending on how long you can concentrate for. Some make it 20 minutes, some make it 40 minutes, but it's just up to you at an individual level. For me, I run it every 40 minutes.
Well, thank you very much, TG. I know that I could take another hour with you, and I would be getting a lot. But you are a man who is very busy and has a busy schedule. But thank you so much for sparing this time to be with us here at the Grand Scale Motivation Show. I can see a lot of comments that are showing that they are appreciating. Some are saying nuggets of wisdom, insightful. Lots of people were super excited to just have you. And I know there's a lot of comments that are going to come after this when people get to know that the Grand Scale Motivation Show was hosting TG. So thank you very much for spending this time with us. I'm sure we will call upon you to share more of your wisdom at some other time. But right here, right now, I just want to say a hearty thank you so much for coming through.
No, pleasure, Onatida. Thank you very much. And I thank God for us mixing up our laptops.
Right there at the airport. Oh my gosh.
Excellent. No, thanks so
The
much.
divine acting that took place was really good for us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming through to the Grand Scale Motivation Show. If you're going to be watching this afterwards, you know this is one you have to take a cup of coffee, chill, you know, and do your Pomodoros, chill and watch this full hour, because definitely you're going to learn a lot from Mr. Tawanda Gumbo's insights, from his wisdom, from his well of, you know, leadership expertise that we got tonight. So this is the place where you get to learn how to grow your business, how you grow in your personal life, and how you grow in all other spheres of your life, including your family. Thank you very much for joining the Grand Scale Motivation Show. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night.